Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is the
Dr. Doreen is an expert in autism. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh.
Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh is a visionary in the field of autism. Now you can ask her questions on Ask Dr. Doreen.
Good morning and welcome to Ask Dr. Doreen. I'm Shannon Penrod, and look who I'm here with. I'm here with the fabulous, the wonderful Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh. Dr. Doreen, good morning.
Good morning, Shannon. Good morning, everyone.
My favorite thing, we're both from home today, and this is a live show. This is the March 24th, 2026. But my favorite thing about doing the show from distance with you is that we get to hear the opener. And we get to hear that wonderful voiceover by a wonderful voiceover actor and a brilliant podcaster in his own right. Are we allowed to say who that is?
Of course, of course.
That is your fabulous son, Sonny.
Yes.
Very talented, and it just makes me grin when I hear him do that opener. So normally when we're in the studio, so you guys know, we can see it on the screen, but we don't really get to hear it. So it's just a fun little perk of doing it from home.
Wonderful. And Shannon, now that we're talking about him, let me plug his YouTube channel, which you should also watch. You would love it. It's called A Grain of Salt.
A Grain of Salt. Okay,
Yeah.
Well, now I know what I'm doing with this weekend. Because Sonny is hilarious and he's wise and funny and just has a very interesting take on the world that I think is refreshing and amazing. And
Thank you.
And he's always been that way. I mean, I only got to know him, I think he was like 17 when I got to know him, and just thought that he was hilarious. And wise beyond his years at 17. And now he's all graduated from college and brilliant, and he was always brilliant. But anyway, I digress. Well, all of your kids are brilliant and funny and wonderful, and as unique. Each one of them is as unique as can be.
Yes,
like you can
all
see,
very different.
You can see that they're all yours, but they're all different aspects.
Thank you.
Which is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. You did good. You did
Thank
really
you.
good.
Thank you.
Anyway, I digress greatly, but we are here this morning with Dr. Granpeesheh, who is a true expert in the field of autism. She's been working in this field for more than 40 years. I know you would never know that to look at her, but she's a brilliant expert in this field. And I think really importantly, she's been an advocate and an ally for those on the spectrum who identify as being neurodivergent, neurodiverse, autistic, having autism. She's been their advocate, their ally for more than 40 years, but also has an eye towards the families and the people around them, helping to support them so they can be better allies to the person that they love on the spectrum. So we're thrilled to have her whenever we can have her live. She's a very busy and in-demand woman, but we're thrilled when we can have her for this hour to answer your questions. We always have a starting topic that we start with, which we're going to start with in just a minute. The topic today is elopement, because that's a very tender issue this time of year. But before we get to that, really quickly, I just want to say we're live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and about a dozen other sites. This show will podcast when we're done. And be available as a free download, as an audio podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, it also can be found on the YouTube channel, Ask Dr. Doreen. If you are loving this content, I encourage you to subscribe on whatever platform you like to listen to or watch, so that you never miss a new show, because they're I find them amazing. I learn so much every time. I do want to say that if you're watching on YouTube or you're listening in podcast, it's free to you, but there is advertising. We're all adults. We know how that works. And that's the way we make it free for you. If that is not your jam, if you like to be able to listen in podcast and not be interrupted, we have a way for you to be able to do that. It's a very low cost thing. You can go over to glow.fm/autism-live. And when you subscribe there for $5 a month, you get everything we do at the Autism Network, including Ask Dr. Doreen. So $5 a month, And anytime we do a new show, it shows up immediately in your inbox and you don't have to go looking for it, and there are no ads on it. So that's available to you as well. Okay. And also, as always, if you have any questions, if you can always ask questions on the platform. Our chat is open now if you want to ask a question, but I also tell you that you can ask questions in advance, and a lot of people prefer to do that because there's no word limit. And anyway, it's a way to connect with me, and then I write you back and tell you that your question is going to be answered on the show. My email is shannon@autism-live.com. You can find me there. Send me a question. We do have starter questions for today, but we will take live questions as soon as you guys ask them. So ask your question early. That's always my advice for you. Okay. So, and I do want to say this, it's, we're just on the cusp of April. We have one more Tuesday before April, but we've got some big things planned for April. So stay tuned to our channel. Hopefully you're going to find some amazing guests with some great information for the month of April. We always try to pull out the stops for April and do a little bit extra because we know you guys are looking. Okay, so Dr. Granpeesheh, our topic today is talking about elopement. And I thought maybe we could start with explaining what that is, because if somebody is new to autism, I know when my son was diagnosed and somebody said elopement, I said, we're not worried that he's gonna go to Niagara Falls and get married. We're worried that, because that's the only word, that's the only context
right,
elopement from.
Right.
I was like, why is that the big, is everybody going? I grew up in upstate New York, so everybody went to Niagara Falls to elope. I was like, that's not the thing. We're not worried about that. We're worried about a million other things, but not that. Right. But this is I joke, but this is a serious subject. Talk to us about what the definition of elopement is, and then let's talk about why it's such a huge concern in our community.
Yeah. So elopement basically just means running away. And the issue, of course, is that it is extremely dangerous because our kids generally don't survive well when they are not in a safe place. Now, as we know, children who run away, they're not really aware that it's not like they're running away from something. They're just not aware that it's unsafe outside the home or away from the parents, that sort of thing. And as you and I both know, there are so many dangers out there, and the one that obviously we've both known people who have experienced is falling in a body of water and not being able to swim and therefore not surviving. So elopement is a very, very important thing. There's, as I told you, coincidentally last night, there was a child in my neighborhood who was lost. And he was a 7-year-old nonverbal child with autism, and it was up on the Citizen app. And of course, my husband and I jumped in the car and started looking, and a lot of other people were looking as well. I'm always very, very concerned because it in a lot of ways is a very, very dangerous thing.
Yeah, just some quick statistics that it's estimated that over 50% of kids on the autism spectrum will engage in elopement. And when we talk about running away, it's not that purposeful thing where you go, I'm packing my bags and I'm leaving. Sometimes kids just wander 5 feet away from their parents, and that's considered elopement. But so more than 50% will elope at some point. These are the statistics. And the number one cause of death for children on the autism spectrum is drowning after eloping. And then the second most common form of cause of death for children on the spectrum is being hit by a car after eloping. Those are two just devastating statistics that always, make me have a hard time breathing, thinking about it, because we care about our kids and we want to keep them safe, but we are people. And it's very hard to have attention 24 hours a day. You need to sleep, you need to go to the bathroom, you need to eat. Nobody ever has eyes on their kids 24/7. So, we're going to answer some questions today, but I want everybody to remember to take a breath. This is the hard stuff, but I hope there's something that will get said during today's show that will spur you into taking action to make sure that maybe there's one thing you haven't done that's been in the back of your head that you're like, okay, maybe I should take care of that, and that you'll take action, because there are things that we can do to work on this with experts, and there are things that we can do in the home to make our kids more safe, and there are things that we can do when we're out and about. And so hopefully we'll talk about all those. But I want to get to a question. Our first question that somebody wrote in was, why do children on the spectrum run towards water?
Yeah. A lot of children actually enjoy water play. It's a common self-stimulatory type of behavior, and they don't know anything. They don't really understand the concepts of depth or, swimming, all of that sort of stuff. So really they're just going towards it because it's something unusual and could be fun, and they can splash around and all that sort of stuff. But as you were going through, Shannon, and saying all of these different things, I thought it would be important for us, and depending on the questions, obviously, but I thought it would be important for us to just go through all the different things that can be done, right? So starting with the whole concept of water, right? And if your child is one who is drawn to bodies of water, the most important thing you can do is teach them to swim. Teach them to swim. Like, it's that simple. And it is, you would be surprised that it is easier to teach a child to swim than to teach them not to run away. So teach them to swim, and that is going to be something very, very important. So that's one thing that you can do right away. Obviously, another thing is a lot of our children don't really understand the concept of strangers. And one of the areas that we touch on is that if you are lost, these are the types of people that you can go to. So, and it's harder and harder these days, but generally someone in uniform, or maybe a mother, for example, someone with a child. There are classifications, I guess, of people that you can go to that might be safer than others. Yeah. So that's a whole nother thing, is like teaching children the concept of strangers, which is a whole area. It's not an quick fix, but it is definitely doable.
By the way, can I just say, when Card worked on this with my son, it was so eye-opening for me. I only have the one son, but I'd been an aunt, and I'd been a teacher, and I thought that I knew things. And when Card was teaching my son, they were teaching me. And one of the first things Card made me do was go to all the stores that we go to and take pictures of what the people in those stores were wearing.
Right.
Like at Target, the fact that they were wearing a red shirt, a name tag, and khaki pants at the time.
Exactly.
And then at Trader Joe's, they were wearing either Trader Joe's shirts, or they were wearing like Hawaiian shirts. Right. It was like, that would never have occurred to me. So they were teaching him, and he began to understand and generalize that, oh, somebody with a name tag is generally a worker here. Right. And they're a person to, like, that would never occur to me. But the biggest one, and you sort of touched on it, was they taught him that if you're ever in danger and you're separated from your parents, find a mom with a kid. Right. Because those are the people that are most likely going to be helpful. That never would have occurred to me. First of all, to know that, but second of all, to teach that to my child. Look for a mom with a kid if you need help. That would never have occurred to me. So I'm happy to share that here. But Card did so many things to make my child safe, which then made me feel like he could be more independent. It's a brilliant gift that you guys gave us.
Yeah,
Truly.
Thank you. And it's such an important thing to be able, like, we know if we're in Target, if we need help, to look for the person in the red vest, right? I don't know how we, obviously at some point we come to realize that, right? But teaching our kids those types of things are very helpful, because then they start to scan and try to find the right person to go to, which is super important for them.
Yeah.
Also, just the whole concept of, find someone in uniform, because a lot of times the other side of this obviously is that if a child runs away, they are pretty scared because they're lost, they don't know who to go to, where to go, and so on. And a lot of times they don't really safely go towards a police officer who is trying to help them. So teaching a child as much as possible how to interact with a police officer or a fireman or something like that is also very valuable, because the other side is true as well. Those folks often don't know how to interact with autistic people. So that's another whole area, which is kind of teaching the recognition of folks who are in uniform and how to interact with them, but also teaching a child kind of the neighborhood and places that a lot of our kids are very good at memorizing directions, streets, etc. But introducing the child to neighbors, it's one thing that is definitely helpful, because most often children are leaving their homes, they're eloping from home. Making sure that the neighbors, if they should see a child who's just your child and they know the child and he's wandering around, to know what to do and know how to deal with it. That is, you're just kind of growing. You have more eyes out there if you do that. And that's not very hard to do. Most of our neighbors know each other, and no matter where you live, that's something you can easily do. So that's another thing. But then I think, my mind last night, the very first thing I was telling my husband was like, why don't they have some sort of tag when we were looking for this child? So I think the most important thing, there's lots and lots of things we can talk about in terms of teaching, but the fastest one, I think, the one that is important immediately until the child becomes a little bit more aware and is able to actually talk to the right person and so on, is some sort of trackable device. And nowadays there are so many trackable devices, right? Whether it's one of those Apple things, or there's just tons and tons of devices that can be tracked on your phone.
Yeah.
And so if you are able to somehow, there are bracelets, there are watches, there are even tags that you can sew in your child's clothing. And that, to me, is the one thing that can allow parents to have a little bit of peace in terms of, okay, if this should happen, I can track him.
Yeah, absolutely. There are all kinds of tags that you can attach to clothes. They even have ones that are temporary tattoos, that if you're going to an event, that there's a company called If I Need Help. We've had them on the show many times before. That they make a whole series of things that are QR codes that are specific to your child. They assign a QR code to your child, and if somebody scans it, it goes to the website, and there's information about your child, how to get a hold of you, what your child might be allergic to, so on and so forth. And as I said, they have everything. They have shoe tags that they can attach it to. There's an iron-on patch that you can put it in all of their clothes. There are clip-ons. There are dog tags that they like to wear a necklace, or if you're going to a big event, a big outdoor event, there are temporary tattoos that you can put on. So that's ifineedhelp.org. And they are parents that created this because they have a child who elopes. And there are other things that are geofencing that you can put a tag on your child, and you can create on your phone a geofence. And if your child breaches that perimeter, you're given an alert and shown where they reach, so you know where to start looking. As you said, there are bracelets, there are watches. We went through a period of time where, what happens is that a child will elope, and for whatever reason, it grabs all the headlines and everybody starts looking for the child. And then unfortunately, sometimes that child is found dead, and there's like a push from the entire country, like, why aren't we doing better? So there was Avante's law that was passed, and we saw that insurance started funding these things. This was a bill that started with I think it was Chuck Schumer who started that. That insurance should cover, if your child has autism, some form of being able to track your child. There was some pushback that came from folks who were adults on the spectrum about, a child, because some of the bracelets are, they lock on so that the child can't take them off. So I think it's important for families. There are lots of different ways to do this. If you have an issue with that, and I just want to say that there are some families that may save the child's life, but it's not everybody's choice. So, but it's possible that your insurance will pay for the tracking devices that you need. But I have seen families take the little rubberized keychain things that come with the AirTags and attach those to their clothing, and then they just remember in the morning they pop the tag in. And they remember before they put it in the laundry to pop the tag out. They're too expensive to launder. And then, the child truly isn't even aware of it, but you're tracking them all day on your phone. I don't think there's any lengths that a parent, if you're afraid for your child's life, it's, it's a little bit more time and effort and a little bit more money. But I always think of, I don't know which expert it was who said, if your child could turn to you, it might've been you, if your child could turn to you and say, at the first opportunity, I'm going to run, what would you do?
Yeah.
And then you should do that.
That's so good. Yeah, that's very good.
Right?
That's so true.
Yeah.
And, Shannon, talking about cost, these days, if you look at, an AirTag costs $6.
Really?
Yes. You can order it on Amazon and you can pop it into a little plastic thing. And AirTags are not the best because they're not super accurate, like in terms of exactly where the individual is, but it's something, and it's something to the general region. So I would definitely recommend looking into this. I like the way you said it, which is if your child said to you, I'm gonna run, how would you prepare today? It's so important.
And then do that. So I want to get to a question, but before we do that, I want to back up and talk about some of these things that, first line of defense sometimes for parents is securing the home.
Yes.
And that's its own little thing, because you have to, I remember when we were in this mode and we were having to make decisions. And I remember we had an expert at the time I was blogging, and an expert wanted to put out their stuff. And so he said, I'll come over and do the consult with you if you blog about it. Sure. Absolutely. And one of the things that he said to me was, we had one window, we were in a condo, and we had one window that was easy to crawl out of, and you wouldn't fall, but you would get to the outdoors. And he said, this window is a problem. And I said, oh yeah, let's put a lock and an alarm on that. And he said, yeah, but it's the window that you need to get out in a fire. And suddenly we had to choose, and we had to be mindful of, we want something that a 3-year-old can't get out, but a fireman can get in, or if we need to bust out of it to get out because there's smoke, that we can get out of it. And I say that only because everything in life is this balance, right? You want to be able to get in and get out. But there's all kinds of locks. You keyed me into the kinds of alarms that are the magnetic. They're fairly easy to install if you have somebody handy at home. That there are 2 magnets that go on either side of a window or a door. And the magnets, if they're touching, if they're close to each other, nothing happens. But if you open the window, and they're cheap. Those are available cheap. And the alarm will go off. It's super inconvenient, if somebody breaches it by accident. But like all things, I think one of the biggest ones is the pool.
I agreed. And those have alarms as well, which we should talk about. But I do think that there are 2 benefits, I think, to the door alarms that you're talking about, because not only are they extremely effective and they kind of let everyone know, right away that the door has been opened. But also, and you have to be very careful with those as well. But I knew a family where they had a lot of different kids, and so the door alarm was going on and off all the time, so they were ignoring it, which is really not good. But there's lots of different kinds of door alarms. Like, you should really look at it and see what fits into your lifestyle. But they are extremely effective. I remember when I was a student, I think I was doing my pre-doc internship. I was working at the help group. That's where I got my pre-doctoral, and I was doing all the programming for 6 group homes. For about a year and a half, I did that. And the group homes were teenagers on the spectrum. And there was a young man who would very frequently take off. He would get bored and he wanted to kind of go in the neighborhood. Fortunately, this is many years ago, Shannon, and there wasn't this kind of technology back then, but those door alarms had just come out. And I remember the day that they put them in, and it wasn't just that the whole house was informed when he wanted to take off. It was also that it actually was not pleasant for him. So he learned to avoid the door. And it took us a while to teach him that, when you're with an adult, like what we decided to teach was that if you're with one of us, the door alarm won't go off, right? Because it had a little trigger and you could open the door without the alarm. And so he then learned very quickly that I shouldn't be going out without an adult. And that was the ultimate, what we wanted, right? It was the best thing. There's also different types of door knobs, which are not easy for kids to open. They're the ones that you have to press on both sides. There's like all kinds of things that can help prevent this as well.
Yeah, there's a whole phase when you have any child, when you have to go through the baby proofing, when you put on it's a terrible time when you're, and there are different ones, like there, are things that you can put on double, things that open like this with 2 knobs, things that, and a slide that goes on it. There's the squeezy doorknobs. There's the things that you have to push down to get into the knife drawer. I mean, the little plastic things that you stick into the electric socket to keep your child safe. And I think everybody needs to do that with all of those things. But then I think if you have a child on the spectrum, you have to go 4 steps further.
Yeah. Agreed.
And take a look at the different technology that is out there and what's going to work on each door. There's different locks for sliding glass doors. I will be honest, we found the thing that worked the best is exactly a piece of wood that is the size of the thing, and we still use those because it deters. It's easy to take out when you want to get out in a hurry, but it deters thieves, and those are the easiest doors to break into. On our door, when Jem was little, and he was in eloping danger, we had 4 different locks on the door. One was the magnet thing. We had a hotel lock, so it would stop it and make a bang noise if somebody tried to open it. We had a bolt, and we had the lock for the door. And somebody had asked the question, did my son ever elope? And there was one day. There was one day that, and I tell the story just because you need to know, you put in the technology, but sometimes our kids are really good at technology, right? And they're really good at functional things. So it was a day when he was about 3.5, and he was getting services from CARD, and we were having it at the home. And we had our first therapist of the morning come, and we had such a good time. And we were always saying to him, we learned that he would have a hard time ending one session, taking a break, and then starting the next session. So we would always give some sort of a reward. So we had promised him that morning that we were going to take a picnic lunch. And he had this little poo hut that, one of those pop-up little tents, and he wanted to take the poo hut, and we were going to sit outside and have the picnic lunch. So the therapist left, but I was preparing the lunch, and I had a phone call. And he kept saying, poo hut, poo hut. And I said, yes, in a minute. He didn't understand in a minute. And I don't know, there was a sound, and I and I wasn't quite sure what it was. And then I realized he had taken his little chair over to the door, and he had figured out, and there were locks that were more than 6 feet up, and he had figured them all out. And then there was just silence.
Yeah.
And something in me went, there's a absence
Something's
of
wrong. Yeah.
Something's wrong. And I went running out the front door, and he was halfway to the street.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think about it, and I was incredibly lucky, because if I had reacted 2 minutes later, I don't know what would happen.
Yeah.
Because he had no danger around cars. Hey, I'm saying hello to Helen. Helen, we're so thrilled to have you here with us. And Nicholas is with us and saying hello to us. So hi, Nicholas. So the locks are important.
Yeah.
And it's important to do as many things as you can, but we always have to remember human error.
Oh, absolutely.
So I want to talk about the pool things, and then I want to get another question. Then we can talk about teaching our kids things too, as you started to talk about. But for the pool thing, I find this is the hardest one. And first of all, for me, it's not just about your pool. It's about having an awareness of who else in the neighborhood has a pool or what bodies of water are near. But if you have a pool in your house, at your house, you have a certain amount of control. So I don't have a pool at my house, but I know that you do, Dr. Granpeesheh. And my frustration is that I see people, the pool alarm that is the most effective is one that and you can set it for the amount of weight. You can say 5 pounds, you can say 10 pounds, you can say 15 pounds. But if that amount of weight goes into the pool and displaces the water, a massive alarm goes off. It is the one that's the most effective, and yet nobody wants to use it. And I don't understand why.
Yeah, I mean, if I was living with a child who was on the spectrum and I had a pool, I would not only use that, but I would make sure that there's a secure gate around the pool with a lock on it, or a very difficult process to get in there. I would do everything. I hate to say this, but over the years, I have known 2 families who lost their child in the pool.
Yeah.
And I think parents don't realize that in one of those cases, it was in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
You know, it was in the middle of the night that the child got up and decided to go in the water, and the parents didn't even know. So a lot of things happen. It's just you need to really exercise extreme caution if you are around the pool. And I had another child who is with us and fine, but she would frequently take off and go to the neighbor's pool.
Yes.
Frequently. So you have to realize that there are all of these dangers, and it's so important. As I said, I think the most effective thing is to teach the child how to swim.
Yes.
Number one.
Yes. And you guys should know that there are people now that this is like a common thing that
their specialty. Yes.
And don't be freaked out. They're going to want to teach your child how to swim with their clothes and their shoes on, because that's how kids go in the water. So they need to know how to float with their shoes and their clothes and their jacket on. Parents get so freaked out about that, but it's the best thing.
Yeah.
Yes. And most of the time around this time of year, I haven't heard anything about it this year, but most of the time, most swimming places will offer a 50% off for the month of April to teach your child how to swim if they're a special needs kiddo. So look around, call places, ask them if they're doing that for April, talk them into it. Because you're right, that is and I want to move on to the teaching. But I do have this question that I want to get to because it feels familiar to me. My 5-year-old is an eloper. I have more locks and alarms on my house than Fort Knox, but most of it can be foiled by human error. My wife and I have been invited for a vacation getaway, no kids, 4 days, all expenses paid, because she does such a great job. I want to go. My mother-in-law has agreed to come and stay with our son. I keep picturing my beautiful son face down in a neighbor's pool. I have told my wife I can't go, that she should go without me. There have been a lot of arguments. It may cost me my marriage, but I can't do it. I can't leave him. I guess what I want to know is how other parents deal with the fear.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Yeah.
so terrible, so devastating for this poor father to be going through this level of anxiety. Yeah, I mean, it's a very heady question, right? So on the one hand, you have your mother-in-law. I would probably, if I was in your place, I would probably feel the same way, and I would probably not just leave the child with the mother-in-law, but maybe have a second person available as well. I'd make sure that I tell all the neighbors that I'm going to be gone for a few days and to keep an eye for just a couple of days. Neighbors are usually very, very helpful with this sort of thing. I would do the tags in the clothing. I would do all these types of things. And I would make a schedule for my child that would keep him or her with an adult all day, very busy, right? I would do all of that to feel. And then you're right, like, even if you do all of that and you leave, you're not necessarily even relaxing and enjoying because you're worried the entire time. It is what it is, right? It's extremely difficult. I don't know how to tell you. I mean, I talk to people a lot about just anxiety and that it is fleeting thoughts and that you have to be able to learn how to let go of your thoughts and all that sort of stuff. But when it comes to a parent who has a legitimate right to have anxiety over something, I understand. Rather than trying to tell you how to not be afraid of it or not be worried about it, I understand. Each of these things I think that we're talking about today helps reduce your anxiety a little bit. Each of those things, right? So like if you have all kinds of locks, it gives you some security. If you have your mother-in-law plus another person there, it gives you a little bit more security. If your neighbors all know, it gives you a little bit more. If you have tags in the individual's clothing or, a tattooed QR code, all these things that are possible, they each kind of make you feel a little bit more safe. But whether or not you ever get to a point where you can just say, okay, it's okay, that's a whole different story. And I think that in itself, Shannon, might be a shaping thing that we could work on, right? Which is, it's not just about eloping from the house. That's something kind of I wanted to touch on as well. It's all these other environments as well. The fear of like being in a mall and suddenly you can't see your child for a moment. They're there, but you just can't see them because they're maybe behind someone else or something. A lot of those types of things they're an appropriate response to a very scary situation, right? It's your sympathetic nervous system, which is on alert, right? And there's not much you can do to get rid of that other than exposing yourself over time to safety, to realizing, okay, it is safe. Okay, it's going to be fine. Okay, I've put in place enough safeguards that I can actually take a deep breath.
Yeah. I love that. And I feel so badly for this dad. And
yeah.
When I first thought, I was like, oh, what would I have done? And I can, I'm a bad test case because I have lots of fear and anxiety and I give into it. I would not go on the trip.
Yeah.
But here's what I would do. Exactly what you're talking about is, that sort of, doing little exposures, but I would never have left my son for 4 days alone with my mother when he was in elopement risk. But what I would do is leave her for first 15 minutes and then an hour and then 2 hours and working up to overnight one night. Yes. And maybe if you tell your wife, look, this is the way I need to do this. But right now I want you to go and be on this 4-day trip and take it and have it be your rest and relaxation. But then let's make a real plan for being able to go do something together so that we can work towards being able to do. Because I think any spouse wants to know that this isn't going to be forever.
Right.
And it's not. It's not forever. But okay, so back to teaching, because we have to secure things and make sure that we've taken as many precautions safety-wise. But then there's a whole level of teaching that we've touched on. Yeah. That there is help and there is hope that over a long period of time, and I think we have to be realistic about that you can teach a child things like who to go to for help, how to appropriately ask if you want to go to a body of water. And I'm a big fan of ABA as a way to teach our child safety. I don't think I would ever have let my child even attempt to cross the street without me there.
Right.
And we're talking, he's 22 years old now, but for years I thought, well, that's never going to happen.
Right.
But you guys taught him and taught me so that I feel comfortable knowing he is out in the world and safely crossing the street.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's the issue with, so there's I guess multiple different aspects of what you can teach. So the first issue is obviously just the lesson that you should not leave without an adult. So wherever you are, you should not leave without an adult. So that's kind of a it's a safeguard against all types of elopement. So, and that takes, as you said, Shannon, lots and lots of time, right? Because it's not just, you have to actually expose the child, allow the child to attempt to leave the house, and then someone kind of like jumps out and says, no, we have to go get an adult. And it's practice over and over and over, and gradually getting to the point where the child gets the message that if I want to leave, I have to have someone with me. That's one thing. But then obviously there's all these other, once we're past with that, and if we're worried that, hey, that might fail, then there's all these things that are out there that are dangerous. So one of them is obviously bodies of water. So the best way to prevent that is swimming, is to teach the child how to swim. Okay, that's one. What about cars, as you said? Okay, well, we definitely can teach the child how to cross a street. Not a extremely busy street, but yes, we can, just like any other child, teaching them how to look right, look left, look at cars coming when there's, and that's a lesson that can take a while, but certainly we can teach how to cross the street. We can teach to some extent the difference of strangers and what type of person is safe, what type of person is not. But if it's really truly an evil person, there's no way to get around that, right? Yeah. So yes, to some extent we can teach that even in the house when we're talking about elopement today, but we also, part of our safety program is also dangerous chemicals, boiling water, fire, all of these types of things we can certainly teach. But there are, as I said, there's safeguards against that. So all of those things are very important to teach, but then there's also just the safeguard of having some sort of technology. And nowadays, not just a tag if your child is younger, but I mean, there's millions of different watches that our kids love to have, the Garmin's or the Apple, whatever, lots of different kinds of watches that will absolutely allow you to track the child no matter what. I don't see anything different than our adults, typically developing kids, where we share our locations on our phones, So it is absolutely a wonderful, wonderful thing. As you know, one of my daughters right now lives in New York this year, and let me tell you, I will wake up in the middle of the night and just make sure she's home, because so it is always a good thing to have some system of knowing where your child is, because I think you can teach as much as you want, but if that one scenario where you didn't teach that, or the child got distracted for a moment, or whatever it is, knowing where your child is comes first, and that will always be the most helpful, in my opinion.
Absolutely. But I just want to further the message to people that there are things that can be taught.
Absolutely.
and that you should be getting help to teach your child that. Because
Yes.
I think so often parents think, oh, well, I guess that's on me. But most of you have access to, you have funding for good ABA. And that's part of what ABA can do, is teach safety skills to your child with you. So that you're learning how to teach it as well, because that's an important component to it as well. Okay. But then we touched on the fact that you want to lean into professionals, that they're teaching your child. We live in a very interesting time where not every neighborhood thinks of first responders as helpers. But it is critical that we, I think, introduce our children to those first responders
100%.
and have them be introduced to your child. And so usually, and it's this time of year that there's some kind of an autism festival, or
Sure.
even your local police department or fire department has an open house, or you call them on the phone and say, when can I bring my child to meet you? And I know that that's a little forward thinking, but that's what I did. And I lived in a community that was so educated, because it's where Emily Island raised her child, and she did all these workshops for the police. And I still took my son to the fire department and to the police department and introduced them and said, this is where we live. Now I realize that I had no fear of police coming to my house and profiling me. So I just want to say that I understand that
Yes.
that's not everybody's,
So true.
and I want to be mindful of that. But I do think that when you take the time to go to the police station and say, this is my child on the spectrum, they make a little card. And then it goes on file, so that if for any reason police or fire has to come to your house, that will come up as they're en route to your house, that there is a child on the spectrum. And we've seen that save lives.
Absolutely. And I think, I don't know, every experience, some things have changed, I know, but every experience I have ever had with the police and one of our kids has been a positive one. I will say that. Like, all the way back to when I was, working in those group homes, I do remember the police routinely would bring this young man home, and it was almost like we had to talk to the police and say, don't make it so reinforcing for him, because then he's going to want to try and seek you out. But they were so nice that it was just kind of, they would bring him home, they'd get donuts for him, all this kind of stuff, and we'd be like, don't do that. But it is scary. I know for a lot of people right now it is scary, but it is very smart at the same time to go over and just say, this is my child, by the way. He lives at this address. If this should happen, we're doing everything we can, but I just wanted you to know.
Yeah, and I want to say that we've covered far too many stories here on on this network of where it went south with a police officer,
really,
and where people have ended up dead, and usually the person on the spectrum.
Sure.
So I'm about being proactive as you can be. And I do feel that it's about communication, that if they have seen your child in a good circumstance and you've explained that they're on the spectrum, I think that goes a long, long way. Because we hear too many stories about police arrive and they don't know what autism looks like. And so they have a reaction and then later find out and they feel bad about it. So making them aware ahead of time, I'm a big fan of. And I'm same thing with the fire department. And by the way, one of the things that I encourage you to do if your child whether it's at a festival, a lot of times they'll have a police car or a fire truck at a festival. I was taught this, I don't know who taught me this, that have your child, interact with the police officer, but have your child ask them if they can hold their badge, because badges that are real are heavy. And there was a rash for a while of people pretending to be police officers with fake thing, and to ask, can I touch your badge, and having the police hear that that's a relevant question from a child on the spectrum. But I also Emily Island made a video. I think it's still available. It's called Be Safe, the movie. I think it's probably on YouTube. And we watched it with our son, and it was so eye-opening for me about teaching your child that if you are stopped by the police, this is how you behave.
Yes.
I was horrified teaching that to my child, but I think it's critical. That they need to know not to run, that they need to, if they're, whatever they're told to do, put their hands on their head, whatever, and practice it when we're not in a high stress situation so that they understand what that is.
Yeah. So there's, and there are many now videos
Yes.
and online also trainings both sides. So there's trainings for the kids and there's trainings for the first responder, whether it's fire or police. And I will say that the training for our kids becomes more and more important as they get older, because there's lots of situations that I know about where, you know, our child doesn't even know the concept of raise your hands, and they're a teenager and they have their hands in their pocket because that's how they walk and that's how they are, and the police consider that to be a very, very dangerous move, is to put your hands in your pocket. So, or if they are holding something and they pull it out, there's lots of situations where it's hard for the police to tell if it's a safe situation. But there's really good training. I'm sure there's millions online now. I mean, God, a long time ago when I was on the board of the Autism Society, the National Autism Society, we made a film that was all about safety for the police. Like, it was teaching the police that, hey, if you do, you know, if you scream the child's name out, that might actually scare them. They might, you know, if they hear a siren, they're going to run away from it. There's things like that I'm not sure. And I think nowadays, Shannon, I think a lot of the police and fire actually receive specialized training because autism has become so pervasive. We do still have our first responder series on our Institute for Behavioral Training. It's out there. So, and it's accessible to people for sure. It's very important.
Yeah, I try to be humble about, you know, behavior is an interesting thing, and what your mind jumps to, it's very interesting. You know, we were someplace the other day and it was very hot out here in Los Angeles, and there was a young person who was dressed head to toe in black with a heavy, heavy black jacket with a hood on, and they were weaving in the middle of the road. And you know, my first thought was, this is somebody who has, you know, some probably some mental issues that are going on, and they're, you know, potentially in heat stroke. But there was somebody else in the car with me who was like, ooh, I think that's a drug issue. And somebody else in the car who was like, I wonder if they're on the spectrum. 3 different people looking at the same behavior, and any one of those things could have been true, but it was a person who, you know, was having a hard time.
Yeah.
You know, we were at a busy intersection. There was no possibility for us to stop or further investigate. So I don't know what happened. I feel bad about it still to this moment. But I just want to say that, as unthinkable as it is for those of us who love people who are on the spectrum, there was the one case of the kiddo who he had a string and he would do this endlessly. And the mom was in a store and she sent him out, an older teenager, like 19 years old. And the police officer saw that behavior and thought it was something else. And, you know, it went very badly. It was traumatic. The teenager lived, but it was very traumatic for both sides, the police officer so I'm all about making sure that they know who your kid is.
Definitely right. Very good point, Shannon. And along with that, I want to say, you know, as we know, this is a spectrum. This is a very, very wide spectrum. Yes. And it's when with our individuals who are less affected by autism and are a little bit more aware of what's going on around them, a lot of that teaching that we were talking about earlier is the right way to go. Because the child or the adolescent or adult can learn to recognize officers and or strangers, can learn to do all of those things that we were talking about that make them safe. But there are also individuals who suffer with very severe autism and are not able to determine or decipher those differences, right? They're not able to learn the difference between a police officer and a dangerous stranger, for example. And that's why in those cases it just becomes so important to do all the other things that we're talking about. Like right now I can think of some of my almost 30-year-old patients who really, they don't have that awareness. They just don't. And it is extremely difficult to teach them something like stranger safety. And it would be vital for those individuals to learn to never take off their watch, for example, or to make sure that they have those tags sewn into their clothes so that it isn't impossible for them to get lost. So, you know your child, you have to determine what's the appropriate way of doing this. But I think that we can't emphasize enough how important it is to pre-plan this one, right? And just not wait for a moment for it to happen, but to be ready in case it should happen. And I also want to say that if your child has never eloped, that doesn't mean that they won't elope, by the way. Like we talk about kids as elopers. No, there's no such thing. I think that when there's curiosity, a child will take off, and they might take off being unaware that, hey, they've lost you now, right? So in addition to all of those things, please, if there's a mall that you go to regularly, make sure your child knows how to get to the information desk. If there's, if there's a supermarket, make sure your child knows how to get to whoever they're supposed to in that place. Those types of things are just simple things that you can work on, and they can be life-saving.
Yes. You brought up something really important that I want to go back to about pre-planning, that having a plan in place, that if your child is separated from you, what are the steps that you take? Because every minute counts. Like if you know that the next door neighbor has a pool and they refuse to have a fence up, and you know that your child is attracted to that pool, maybe your plan is the very first thing you do is you check next door. And every minute will count towards saving your life. And maybe you run to the pool while you're calling 911, and and hopefully you've already alerted the police that your child is a danger for this, so that they don't take 20 minutes on the phone with you figuring out whether it's really a risk or not, but they start looking for your child immediately. But having that plan. So really quickly, if you think about it, what we've covered, I mentioned that Autism Care Today, the wonderful charity that you founded many, many years ago, has had a program called STOP for a lot of years, and we just covered all phases of it. So the S in STOP stands for secure the area and know that, you've got as much protection going on as possible. T is for teach your child all the skills that they need to have. O is for dealing with officials. Talk to the officials in your life and have them be aware of the situation, have your child meet them. And then the P is for planning what you will do if something should happen. And that it's not one of those things. If you just do one of those things, you're doing something, but it's not going to cover you. But if you do all of those things, and if we all do all of those things, then hopefully we can stop some of this. We have a question that somebody says, do kids on the spectrum outgrow eloping? The outgrow is a very interesting thing for me.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible that they outgrow it because they lose interest in the thing that was drawing them out there. But in most cases, no, they don't outgrow it. It's curiosity. There's wandering and going out there is just, oh, what is that body of water? I want to go towards it. That's not something they outgrow. Or, oh, what are those shiny things that are crossing across the street? I want to go see what they are. That you're not going to outgrow those types of things. They're sensory kinds of needs and so on, and they will stay with you. So I think it's, but at the same time, you could outgrow things like, oh, I want to go to this shop. I'm going to run away and mom's not going to know. So some of it, yes, but the majority of it, probably not. And so it's very, very important to stay on top of it and teach the child as early as possible.
Yeah. We're out of time, so we don't have time for our last question, which is how to prepare school for this. But maybe we can get to that another day, because that's a whole other Oprah. But I wanted, we've got less than 30 seconds, but I just wanted to stop and thank you. I hope that somebody hears this and takes some action, and that a life is saved today. Because this is the time of year when it happens the most. For various and sundry reasons, you guys. So be aware. But you're incredible as always.
Thank you, Jenna. As are you.
Well, I just appreciate you more than you could possibly know. We're really looking forward to all the wonderful things that we're going to be talking about during April. But I just humbly thank you for all the knowledge that you have shared with me and my family and with so many families over the years.
Thank you so much, Jenna.
Make me weepy. Okay, you guys, we have a great show tomorrow. We're going to be talking with an amazing speech and language pathologist who's going to talk about making sure that you get the right services at school, especially for those of you who are maybe in an underserved community. So it's going to be a great discussion and about making sure that the right things are in your IEP so that you get the right speech support from school, which is really available to a lot of people. So don't miss that. Make sure that you're with us tomorrow. Thank you for being here. Give your kiddos a hug from me and one for you too. Bye-bye for now. Bye,
Bye,
Dr.
everyone.
Don't forget, you can watch Ask Dr. Doreen live every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Pacific time. We hope to see you there.